Perfect. Call to order at 8:30. Everyone had a chance to look through the agenda. It's pretty straightforward. Motion to adopt the agenda is presented.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Also Warwick. All in favor? Carried.
So, Mr. Mayor, Sarah's joined us to help if there's any technical questions that are above my head. But I'm just gonna go through the project. I do apologize for the error and sending out one document that was incorrect, but I'm glad I caught it before we made the decision. So basically, as council's aware, we've been talking about this project for probably since 2021 in some sense. Heart of Sky had some dollars through Prairie's Can and did some work on Hanna Community Development Plan, which included seniors amenity zone and included Main Street downtown design. So they did a bunch of work in 2021 and public engagement. They had set up at the post office. They attended farmers markets. They sent questionnaires to the businesses. And came back with a concept. It kind of sat on the shelf for a little while, and then probably in late 22, early 23, we started talking more about it, and we retained MPE to do the detailed design work. And at that point, we made some changes to the original concept, removed some items from the project, such as trees, windscreens, changed the bump out sizes, did some of that work as we move forward. As we moved into 2024, council did approve a capital budget based on the estimate of the project of $5,779,855. That was the pre-tender estimate. We were going to fund that with funding from the federal government through the Canada Coal Transition Initiative Infrastructure Fund, $4,194,074. Some deferred federal gas tax money that we had not spent from the years 21 to 23, so $759,430. And some municipal sustainability initiative capital from 2020 to 2023, $826,351. So that was the budget that's been approved. As we all know, the downtown redevelopment project consists of capital work in the 100 and 200 blocks of 2nd Avenue West and the westerly half of the 100 block of 2nd Avenue East. So it is the replacement of water, sewers, storm mains, reconstruction of the road base, including removal of contaminated material, new asphalt surface, new concrete sidewalks, including pedestrian-friendly bump outs at the intersections, benches, bike racks, tables, planters, new curb and gutter, and new pedestrian-friendly lighting. So the project went out to tender via the tender and bids website that MPE uses and a lot of the engineering firms use to get their projects out. Tenders closed at 2 p.m. on Thursday, March 21st. There were 4 tenders that were received for the project. The low tender was $5,792,397.23, and it's plus GST. So I don't count the GST because we do eventually get the GST back. So that's the net cost after GST is rebated. And the high tender was $7,455,550 plus GST. In that amount that were mentioned above, there is a contingency or extra work allowance of $400,000 in case we run into issues that we're unaware of, and that does quite often happen in underground stuff because you don't know exactly what's under there. So there is $400,000 in there, which is I always recommend that you have a decent contingency going in, so you can maybe deal with some of the surprises up front and not get caught on the back end. So in addition to that tender price, because ATCO has our franchise fee, or our franchise, electrical franchise right, they have the right to install the streetlights. So we do have, quotes from ATCO for total project Schedule A and B, it's 319, 581.42. That is for the streetlight component. If we change it, I know we talked about Schedule A, and Schedule A is basically anything west of Center Street. Schedule B is the portion that would be east of Center Street, the half block by the post office. Go ahead,
I have a
Councilor Rose.
question. On the
Yeah.
west side, that's on both sides, right? Or I'm sorry, on the post office side.
Yeah.
That is both sides, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So,
made that assumption.
yeah,
And also, who is bringing the dirt back in for the stuff that is being taken out, the contaminated?
we've been part of this project. It's
Okay, that-
included in the tender.
Okay, because it says removal, but it does not indicate replacement.
Well, sorry, yeah,
Whether the town was doing that, I
No.
don't. okay,
no,
thank you.
that's included in the tender.
Okay,
Engineering costs have been anticipated at 392,000. That includes, full-time, on-site as well as environmental, consultant on-site when they're removing the contaminated materials testing, all of those things. So when I looked through the report and the tender, there were two options. One option is to award only Schedule A of the project, which is from Center Street West, the 2 blocks. If we remove the provisions or Schedule B from the tender award, and we include the lighting, everything, the project would come in at $5,693,405.42. So slightly under our original project budget of $5,779,000, by 86,000. So we would fund that same grant funds we would use. We would just have to use a little bit more of our MSI, slight number, because we wouldn't be able to use the full amount of the federal government grant, because theirs is based on 72% of the project cost up to that 4.194 million. So that is an option. The second option is to award Schedule A and B, which is the entire project. It would increase our project budget by 654,000. And we could fund that, and I would suggest if council wishes to go that route, we would fund that with additional deferred MSI. And that would, we have that capability. It just leaves less MSI for future projects, future infrastructure projects in the next few years if we're gonna tip into another $650,000. But we do have it available, so it's not available, it's there.
so what would that leave us in MSI?
It would
reserve?
probably bring us down to what our 2024 allocation would be, so about 600,000.
But that can be replenished, like anything that we have a surplus gets. Correct?
Well, it gets put into surplus, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and we do have some surplus. We do have some street and road reserve this year, for example. The money we got, the additional money we got from special areas on the industrial tax transfer, we transferred into a street and roads reserve. So we are trying to build that reserve up. We know that Pioneer and Palliser need to be redone. So that's kind of next on the list and trying to build up there. So I would suggest that we dip into the MSI money before we dip into our own on these projects. So, but we do have the capability and the dollars in our MSI allocation to handle this increase if council wishes to go that direction. So as you see, it drives up the project to $6,433,978. The low tender through the project was Brooks Asphalt and Aggregate. We MP has checked all of the tenders to make sure they're accurate and acceptable and they meet all the securities. The town has worked with Brooks on many projects. This would be our largest project, but we have worked on them over the years with pavement patching. They did the airport runway paving for us, is probably the biggest project in the last 2 years. So we're comfortable working with them. Know some of the people that will be involved in the project because they've been in town and worked on our infrastructure previously.
Mr. Neal,
Yeah.
can I just ask a question in regards to the Brooks aggregate? The fact that this is kind of late in the day and we're looking at moving forward on this fairly quickly, do they have a time frame?
Yeah, they're aware of the they're aware of the schedule,
Okay,
and substantial completion of the project in the tender was end of September, so.
okay, thank you.
So they're aware of that. I don't know for sure the timing of when they'll start and when that will happen, but we'll know that after we get going, so. So that's where we're at. I don't know if there's any further questions or if I've explained it well enough, but
So is there money in there for the lighting on that other half block, Kim?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I
You can
just-
see in the two differences. In the shortened budget, it's 254 for the lighting, and in the
Three.
full practice, 319.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to verify
Yeah.
my little noodle.
Yeah, go ahead, Council Murphy.
So the extra half block, which includes Canada Post, which
Yes,
is basically the only thing besides a fantastic vape store, which I, awesome vape, but that's it. So let's say we do all this work, ta-da, and Canada Post doesn't renew their lease and they move. It seems like a barren wasteland without Canada Post there. Do you know whether or not they have a long-term lease and have no intentions on leaving that area?
I can't answer that question,
Okay.
Councilor Murphy. I just know, and I'm not a long-term person here, but I know they've been in that site I first came to Hanna in 92 and they were there. I'm
Oh,
not sure.
that long?
I'm not
Okay.
sure how long they've been there, but I've been there at least 35 years.
They were in that brick building.
Yeah, right
In
at
92.
the corner,
Yeah.
west of them, right at the corner.
The Western
Years.
building.
Would have been in that corner
But
for,
when I came in 92, I'm sure they were in that strip
Yes,
mall.
I think you're right.
I moved here in 92 and they were, I remember going to the brick
The
building.
brick building.
See, I never remember going there.
Yeah.
So, but they've been here a long,
Regardless.
regardless.
Well, it was built in 80, right?
Yeah, I think
Post
so.
office, and that is, it was built in 80, I think, or 81.
Yeah, because my aunt and all them,
They've been there for a long time.
Been there for a long time.
25 for sure, because I've been here for 25, so.
Well, I know that-
I
Okay.
think at the end of the day, regardless of what's in there, it is a strip mall and it's a business component. Same with on the other side, even though it doesn't come up as far, you've got that corner
Cooperators.
lot with the cooperators. It comes probably
On the real estate. Yeah.
half of what that next section would be, so.
And it may improve the viability of people moving in there with better road
Possibly,
structure.
yeah, possibly, yeah.
But can I
Thank
just
you.
add to that? Because I think the bigger picture here is not just what we see aesthetically, but we're also looking at underground infrastructure, which
Absolutely,
needs
yeah.
to be done anyhow. So, I mean, it's okay to look at what's gonna be above surface, but also what needs to be done
Underneath.
underneath
Absolutely.
in that downtown.
And
core.
getting rid of the toxic, whatever we have under there that's.
So does this include new services to all
Yes,
businesses?
yeah. Yeah, services will go right to their buildings.
Property.
Well, it'll go, yeah, and that's one of the things, one of the changes we've made following the pre-bid meeting is if you walk down our main street, you'll notice our curb stops are tight to the building. Right tight to the building, and all the contractors were like, that's not the best spot. So we worked with them and MPs worked with them and we moved them out to the outer edge of the sidewalk so that they're not as tight to the building. And if they, one, they're trying to replace them, and two, if you ever have to do work on them in the future, they're in a better spot, so.
So Brooks asphalt today and where the store furniture is on.
Yes,
And everything's.
Brooks was here and Brooks actually were part of the walkthrough on March 12th. They had I believe 3 individuals, there from their company that did the walkthrough, and they've done lots of work in our town and are in our town, so, they probably have the most history with the
I
community.
think we're gonna have one business that's gonna probably jump on anything that they can possibly.
Well, one of the things that Sarah and I talked about that can be done, and she recommends as we move forward is they've done on some other projects, brought in a building inspector, so home inspector, for example, come in, document the building, the condition it's in, pictures, everything, so that if there is issues that come up, you've got all that documentation, you can go back and say, prior to construction, this is what your building looked like, this was the condition it was in. So know that crack was there already, it wasn't part of this, just to kind of make sure everybody knows where everything was at before the project started, so.
Definitely. My only fear about that, Mr. Neal, is a couple of the buildings might be condemned.
Well, sorry, when I use the word, but when I use the word building inspector, it's not a regulatory
Okay.
situation. It's basically someone you would bring in that would give you a home inspection. So it's just basically taking pictures, identifying any weaknesses they see up front.
Thank you.
They're not gonna come in and condemn.
There's a few of them. I'm surprised they're still standing.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. So basically, if we're looking at the pre-tender cost, you're looking at $2.89 million per block. And if we are considering adding the east portion, then we're looking at $654,000 for half a block.
The difference I would suggest, Councillor Bowden, in that too, is that the initial phase or Schedule A will include the bump outs on the east side of Center Street.
Okay.
So you've removed that portion, and as you move forward, there's not as many services and stuff. So it's a little misleading, a lot of cost too, when you figure out half and half. You've got your mobilization, demobilization, different stuff like that, that's not as part of that. So,
So you're not contaminated soil.
right, yeah.
Yeah. But if it's all done now, then economically would be better in the sense that you don't have to call people back. You don't have to pay for that mobilization and all that other stuff. They're already there,
Yeah.
they're ready to work and things are there, plus the timeline and such.
No, if your intention is to ultimately get that work done, whether it's now or 3 years from now, this is the time to do it.
Exactly.
100%. They're here, they're part of the project. We all know costs are going up.
I was gonna say inflation alone, like, cause
Yeah.
the bridge went from 1.4 million to 1.7 million in
Well,
a year and a
exactly.
half, so.
Yeah.
So I think if the intention is to want to complete that project to there, now is the time to do it. There's no question about that.
Well, and I think after this, we have other areas that
Right.
need our focus.
Yeah.
You know, so if this is the project we're doing, I mean, and I wanted to just, sorry, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, I know you said that we started this project in 2021. Was back when I first became a counselor. When I was looking back, I understood that this was in place a bit before that because we had some coal transition dollars. So, we made some decisions, we had some conversation, but in fact, this started before was, some of this had started long.
Well, I guess my comment around that, actual expenditure on the project was 2021.
Yes, okay, the
Um,
expenses around.
I know,
that's the
and
dollars.
Councillor Bowden will remember, I know the term before, council spent some time with Doug Griffiths on some strategic planning and some ideas, and I know with that group of councilors at that point in time, downtown was their priority.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of moved from there to then Harvest Sky had some dollars that we were able to use and they moved forward on those projects. Then,
Cause
but
that was
yes,
almost a full term, just with some of the motions and decision making was almost a full term before
Yeah,
that.
but the
that
previous
took place.
council did with
Yes.
Mr. Griffiths, that was
Yes.
the priority we came out of all those strategic planning discussions.
Let's go.
And I just want to, make a comment that this will not have any impact on resident taxes, correct?
The,
Because it's all money
Correct.
that is set aside, has been put on reserve and everything else, so it will not, like, just for anybody this, it will not raise residential taxes.
Shouldn't.
no,
Yeah.
you're 100% correct, Councilor Bowden. The dollars are in place.
Yes, and that's the only point I wanted to make, is that for anybody listening, it will not have any effect on them.
Yeah, no, we're not using any tax dollars at this point in time on this project. When I say tax dollars, I mean municipal tax
I'm gonna
dollars.
say there's only one taxpayer.
There is portions of tax that are in
Yeah.
this process.
So basically, we're all paying for
Yeah.
it through the federal tax.
And I know, and I know a lot of people will always make the comment, there is only one taxpayer, and they're right, 100% they're right, there is only one taxpayer. My argument always is, if we don't take those dollars here, somebody else is gonna take them. It's not like that's going to go back into their coffers and we're gonna see a reduction in taxes. It's gonna be spent, it's just gonna be spent in another community, so.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions?
Do you have any technical questions? I brought Sarah on and, in case there was any.
And just in regards to the lighting, if we didn't move forward with any of that, what would that look like long-term? Like in the future? If we were, you talked about some of the lighting, if we didn't change any of that or move forward and, spending money on that, would we?
Well, I don't know, at the end of the day, I guess the concept and the plan and the detailed design was all based on the new lighting and the pedestrian friendly lighting. There would be some changes, obviously, we'd use the existing lighting, and we would move those out, but I don't think you get the same look and feel that you want with those, and that was the reason to go with the pedestrian style, lower lighting. Decorative.
It's broken out because it has to be done through.
Yeah, the reason it's broken out is that ATCO's going to do, the contractor, in the contract, there is a fair bit of, the contractor's going to lay conduits and do some of the work, but ATCO is responsible for the installation and, of the streetlights, and the supply.
I have
Councilor
another
Bowles?
question, again, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
And so there's no areas within the design that could be cut a little bit to, from what is already established? Like, there's no cost savings, or is there any cost savings by reducing still further some of that?
Well, we
Potentially, but we're pretty
put it
late
to
in the,
tender.
we're pretty
No,
late
I
in
know
the
that,
game.
I know
Yeah.
that, but
You can't,
Sometimes when you start this process, you go out to tender, you get a price, and then you want to start removing things, you don't necessarily get the bang for your buck when you remove them from the
That's-
project. I think at the end of the day, I know that some people will get concerned that we don't need to do the pretty stuff, but we need to remember the federal grant was for infrastructure, but it was for,
the pretty stuff.
increasing the viability of the downtown
Mhm.
and making the downtown more attractive, more business friendly, more people friendly.
Yeah.
And when you start to pull out some of these things, like the water sewer doesn't make any difference to that. It's important, obviously, but it doesn't create and change the feel of the downtown when you want to get people there. So that I would hesitate to start pulling any of that
yeah,
stuff out.
no, that's just a question to make
Yeah.
sure that there is no opportunity there. And I have, heard from people that said they've had people visit our community and were very, and they said, yeah, the downtown is not pretty, not attractive and that sort of thing. So regardless of what some people think about not about investing in visual stuff, it does kind of make quite a difference. I also had somebody ask about, well, how come, you know, the contaminated soil hasn't bothered us for now? Why does it have to be replaced? But it's a law, it's a provincial law, is it not? Or something that once that something is identified as
Has to be
contaminated,
dealt with.
it has to be dealt with. So really, we really don't have any say in that.
No, and I think the other comment is if we're gonna put new water and sewer pipes in, we wanna ensure that we're not putting them back in surrounded by contaminated material.
Yeah.
It's just the right, healthy, ethical thing to do.
It'd be hard to look at our children and grandchildren and say, we wanted to save some money, so
We left the
we
contaminated
left
material.
contaminated soil in there for you guys to deal with.
Yeah, well, that was just a comment they said, and also that, well, has it really bothered us to date? We don't know, but yeah, being that it is an environmental thing, yeah.
I think when you look at the overall dollars, what we're given through the MSI and the FGT and the CCTI, I mean, our portion is minimal in comparison. So I think when I think about the underground infrastructure, our pipes need to be replaced. This is only one portion of it, but this is a start. And I think, you know, that's where I'm favorable to have this done. I know we're going to be spending some extra dollars, but in light of having, you know, that work done, I'm in favor of moving
And
forward.
I think that's the advantage of, you know, councils have been saving these grant dollars and not spending them for these types of projects. And it's great that we have that capability with those deferred grants, that it's available, that we haven't spent them on other projects and done. Now they're available for this and they can be used.
What the pushes that coal transition by the.
Well, without that large 70% of the cost,
This project doesn't
we
have.
probably aren't going to do even the underground at this point with the money we have.
Not even a block.
So,
Okay, just gonna run through real quick, Council Crowe, anything you wanna add or ask?
So Brooks Asphalt, they're in control of all the
yes,
subcontractors?
yes, yeah. And I know that sometimes gets to be a
Sticky,
sticky point out there that we didn't go local, but on these large projects, hopefully our local guys have reached out to them through that. I know some of them have. But a lot of the work that is being done probably aren't, you know, we'll have the ability to do some gravel in, gravel out. But probably that's might be the limit. There will be some, hopefully, some of our plumbers will be able to be involved in terms of the temporary water and connection of outdoor taps and getting those in the buildings. That'll be hopefully locals that will be able to do that work. But our largest, you know, probably local supplier would be the supply of gravel and trucking. And who knows, there might be a few people in town, if Brooks is looking for some laborers, there might be an opportunity there, so.
Council Bowden? Anything to
Oh, I
add?
think I've said enough.
I'm giving you one more opportunity, I realize that's odd, but.
I just know that Brooks has been the go-to when they're doing all sorts of work with public works and stuff, and they're very good working with and that sort of thing. And to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the others, and there's no reason I should be.
Yep.
But I think that carries a lot of weight if you have a good relationship with them already and you're satisfied with their work, then you don't have to second guess or
We know how to get a hold of them.
you know how to get a hold of them, yeah, for sure, and you know the work is very good.
Well, the other thing at the end of the day, Councilor Bowden too, they're gonna wanna continue to do work here. So I think, you know, they're gonna put their best foot forward.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Council Rowland?
And I think that there has been opportunity in previous years that I know of where some locals have had employment opportunities. Even if it's been for a short amount of time, they've had opportunities, so maybe that's an opportunity again, but I too have said enough.
Council Murphy?
I'm happy with it. There was no contingency within the tender document to encourage them to hire local, right? I
No,
assume not.
no, those are really hard on public tenders to put anything in. You can put something in that you encourage them to look at local, but you
Yeah.
can't you can't make it mandatory.
Counselor Farrell?
The only question I got is, if they run overtime, are they gonna be held liable? You know, for costs? If they're, say, maybe overruns.
I
by
don't
about a month?
believe that would be a question maybe for Sarah. I don't know. We did talk about whether we would put a penalty clause in. I don't know if we did.
Yeah, there is a liquidated damages price in there. I believe just on the top of my head is around 1,500 a day. And mainly, we're gonna have somebody on site full time, so that mainly covers the price of our site inspector, who would be on site a much longer than anticipated, so that's mainly what that's to cover, but yeah, I believe that's 1,500 a day.
Oh, that's all right.
Well, doesn't every contract, they've got insurance that they have to carry for some things.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the question.
Yes. They'll have their liability insurance, they'll have their workers' compensation, they'll have all their
Yeah.
security bonds, everything.
Yeah, so that is a backup
Yeah.
as well.
And
I
the
think.
challenge is when you put a penalty in, especially with an outdoor project, there unfortunately is things that are out of their control. It's not just that they're going slow or not paying attention to it. Sometimes there are things that are out of their control. And the other thing, when you do put a large penalty that it has to be done, sometimes that comes back to bite you because they
Rush
in their in their tender, they're like, okay, if we're gonna have to overtime and bring in extra crews and stuff, that's gonna cost us, so we're gonna make sure we got the price up higher, so.
I guess from the local contractors, standpoint, I think if they're competitive, there's no way that they shouldn't be. For example, the gravel, if you want the work and you're local and you can get it here, there's no way you should be able to get it here any cheaper than somebody hauling it from somewhere else.
True.
With the backfill and the work that has to be done, the same thing. Your guys are here, so you should be able to be competitive. But Brooks is gonna take advantage of every opportunity to save a dollar. So I think to, appease, satisfy, I guess, for lack of a better, the locals will have an opportunity to deal with Brooks. I am 99% positive on that. In fact, I know for a fact that they've reached out to 2 different contractors in town, so. Okay, and in closing, I guess, we need a motion.
So, Mr.
Nope.
Mayor, just
Mr. Bill,
before,
sorry.
not to cut you off, but so you can see in the recommended motion, I've got the Schedule B pulled out, so sounds like consensus of council is they'd like to move forward with the full project, Schedule A and B. So in that case, the motion would be the option 1 listed.
Yeah.
There would be the motion you'd want to have on the floor.
Okay. Everybody good to go?
Yeah.
Motion, the council amends the redevelopment project capital budget from 5.779885.00 to 6.433978.65 with funds derivative from the Municipal Sustainable Initiative, MSI, at 1.4807.65 and deferred gas tax money of 7594300 and the coal transition money of $4,194,074 and awards the tender for the town of Hanna downtown redevelopment project Schedule A and B to Brooks Asphalt and Aggregate Limited in the amount of $5,722,397.23 plus GST. Motion, Counselor Cole. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. And I will adjourn that meeting at 9:05. What was that for? Okay, we'll call the information session order at 9:05. Everybody had a chance to look at the agenda. Any errors, deletions, none. Motion to accept the agenda is presented. Counselor Murphy. All in favor? Carried. Public presentations.
They're part of the meeting unless Mrs. Visti has anything.
Nope. Just giving you the opportunity, Mark.
Yeah.
This is your time to shine.
No, thank
No, thank you. On to Mr. Dale's report.
So I don't have a ton of updates in here, just wanted to basically touch base. We know where we're at with the downtown redevelopment project. Pioneer, Allison Pioneer, still detailed design work being completed, but that's kind of been slowed off now that we know we're moving forward on the downtown. That will be a 2025 capital project. And we will keep our fingers crossed if we get any money from the province through that.
Oh,
The
shit, Sarah.
local municipal initiatives, I know they told us not to get our hopes up. It's very well so overly subscribed, but we did put in an application. Bridge again, haven't heard anything. I'm hoping we would hear something probably in the next month or two, if we're approved or not. And water sewer servicing, I haven't heard anything back from Prairie Land in regards to meeting to talk about that project. Community center kitchen renovation, just wanted to update you. Kevin's here. Kevin's been dealing with the installers and the suppliers of the equipment. So we're a little bit frustrated. It's a little bit delayed. We have had all our work ready in anticipation of March 18th. They were supposed to deliver, install the week of March 18th. That's been bumped now to April 1st. Work completed, like I said, we've done all the stuff we want, the new floors in, it's laid, we're just waiting for the equipment to come to be installed. We do have a local plumber lined up for April 2nd, 3rd, so when the equipment comes, they can hook up the gas lines, they can hook up the water lines, they can hook everything up and be ready to go. We do have an event in there on April 10th, so that's our target. So it's been a little bit frustrating to say the least, but that's where we're at. We're just waiting now for them. And the other thing, just to let council know, so the previous agreement for the janitorial and caretaking services had expired the end of December 23. We sent out and advertised a request for proposals for janitorial and caretaking services. We had 5 proposals received by the deadline of March 15th. So we've reviewed them and we did award the agreement to Brent and Jill Olson at a rate of $2,200 a month. That was the lowest proposal price and was the price that we were paying previously. So the other tenders, one was close, but the other ones were all significantly higher. So they will begin work on it as of April 1, 2024 for 2-year period. But other than that, I don't think there's certainly some other things going on around town. We're at that point in time, Mr. Mayor, that the ice is coming out here. Hopefully tomorrow is the plan. Plant will be off late this afternoon. Now we'll start our transition into outdoor stuff and spring, summer stuff.
There
So
goes my propane sales.
there goes your propane sales, yeah.
And then just back on this janitorial.
Yeah.
I know the public's gonna say, well, why is somebody that's already an employee of the town being awarded something like this? I mean,
Just the fact that it was an open proposal and
I'm just saying what the public's gonna take.
yeah, no. But when we look back and it was a fair, open process, so they're not, this is above and beyond their,
Well, we answer back, is it
Originals.
was put to public tender, and that was the lowest tender, so I mean, whether the perception, yeah, and I agree with you, Councilor Crowe, the perception is poor. But ultimately, there was an open tender and they were the lowest tender, so you can't punish them for being the lowest tender, for working for it, so. I think that's your rebuttal back to the public, if somebody says something, that we're being diligent and trying to do it as cost effectively as we can. Vice versa, if you work to somebody else and word gets out that we had a tender that was lower and didn't accept it, what do we get?
yeah, no, there is some optics.
Either way.
Oh, no, we're hooked either way, you're absolutely right.
There is some optics, no
But I
doubt.
think the easiest answer is that was the lowest tender and we accepted it, and being responsible, fiscally responsible. So I think that's the best way to rebut any questions. I'm prepared for that as well, so.
That's why I don't go on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, yeah, unless there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, that's quick report.
Perfect. Any other questions?
So how much, is compared to the old contract,
Same price.
Same price.
same price? Oh, okay.
Hey, hearing none. Parks,
Come on up, Kevin, Pam.
I think you should come to all of our meetings now.
Yeah.
That was a look of no.
Sure.
Slightly, so there's a copy for each of you.
Um,
No, sit.
oh, I get to sit? Okay.
You,
Oh,
come on up, Pam.
Understand the bleach.
Yeah.
So you guys, I assume, have looked through this, to a degree. Pam's put a lot of work into this and you actually have my other copy.
So just Kevin, yeah. They just got it late yesterday,
Okay.
so I think we will take our time and.
We're gonna go through it all. I just wanna preempt it with, one, I do realize optics is a big thing. But to lead with that, I had a quick moment yesterday, I had a bit of a brainwave. I went and worked with Caitlin a little bit and looked at some of our stuff. So our flower watering is all done from our fill station at the shop. And so comparing that water meter to various ones, I don't have exact numbers. I didn't have time to go through it all. Our fill station is less than 10% on any given month than the triplex for irrigation. And is approximately 20 to 25% of Turtle Park. So just, again, when we're putting this time and effort into cutting back on flower watering, I think a lot of that is optics because people see it happening versus where we're gonna save water is going to be on our irrigation, which we're going to be cutting back. Like I said, if we're doing the triplex 20 minutes 3 times a week, if you cut that to 10 minutes 3 times a week, we're already cut that in half. And people don't see it because it makes more sense to water at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Mhm.
So you don't lose as much to evaporation and whatever else. So I just want to get that out there first, that irrigation is going to be huge this year for saving our water. We're going to cut our grass longer. We're going to work with Vol to make sure that, I mean, it might not be as green and lush as they like, but we're not gonna let it die. We can't just shut it off.
Yeah.
It is an investment in our parks and everything. So we are gonna cut everything back to bare minimums with the realization we do need to conserve water.
Mhm.
But now, that being said, we do have some options here that I'll let Pam go through with our watering. of
And when
the-
you say fill station, excuse me, like what is that? Is that
It's
a-
just it's a tap at the shop. It's
Okay,
a 2-inch line that we fill up
okay,
right from our shop.
Fill up their water tank.
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Fireball.
sorry, can I say something just
Go
before?
ahead.
That I would like to commend Pam and all the work that she does with watering and caring for the flowers and everything. It's been amazing. And so,
Well,
yeah.
Thank
kudos
you
to
very much, but boy, it is definitely a team effort.
Yes.
It really is.
Yes, for
Like,
sure.
we are all very invested in our town, not just the optics, but like the overall environmental impact it has, like where people live.
Mhm.
And like, we are all really focused on that.
Mhm.
So, and we've had nothing but the best support as well.
Mhm.
Like, couldn't ask for more support.
So that carries then to parks as well for all the work that you guys do too.
Yeah, but we do have amazing parks and a lot for a town this size, more than people
Exactly.
realize.
Oh, I think they realize. We have a lot.
Actually, to be honest with you, I had no idea how much green space we actually had. And when Kenny come down to do the reconciliation, speak, him and I went for a drive just to show him the town, and it was kind of amazing when you're showing somebody as you're driving around and you're going, we do that, we do that, we do that, we do that, and it was a huge realization as to how much we do. And like I said, I've been here for 25 years, and when I'm showing somebody what we do, I'm going, holy crap, there is a ton of work out there.
You
So-
never got involved with communities in Bloom. You
No, I
were able to see how
So
much green
before,
space we
before we
have.
turn it over, Mr. Mayor, so what Pam and Kevin we're gonna have a discussion just generally around, I wanted to use the opportunity to educate council too in terms of where we plant flowers, what type of planters we have, what we plant, where we plant flowers, all of that thing. So you have that understanding of what they do, where they go. I learned some things through this process with Pam and Kevin. The other thing that I'm glad you recognized Pam. I said to Pam, because Pam has informed us this is her last summer. So I said, sorry, Pam, we're asking you to not go out on as big a bang as you'd like. But she's been she understands and has put some stuff together for you guys to have a discussion around, and then from this discussion, we can finalize a plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Pam.
Okay, well, this first page just gives you an idea, in an ordinary summer, what is planted. And the desert planters are planters that have reservoirs in them, so, and they aren't air permeable, so they are a little bit more of a water saving type of container. And so they're listed, they are, everything is listed by the type of container that it is. And as you can see, there's quite a bit there. And when you get to the plots, that's the big one at the library, out at Fox Lake, and then up at the cemetery. And those plots, I know they are pretty, but they're also planted as part of the overall health of our ecosystem, mainly on pollinators, et cetera, for people's gardens. I don't think people realize how important it is for anybody with fruit trees, with their fruits, with their shrubs, with their raspberry patches, their strawberry patches, their gardens. It's all, that's what we focus on for our planting there. And I know that maybe it's a thought that might be an obvious thing to not plant, but I just want you to be aware of some of the reasoning behind some of these plantings. Even in the normal barrels, et cetera, there are plants in there that are very beneficial for pollinators, et cetera. And we do not recommend reducing any watering on trees. Like, we have to maintain all of our trees. They're an investment. They help in the overall situation of even attracting water. So yeah, we have no new tree projects on the go to be planned for this year, but we definitely have to look after the ones we have, and we use bags for 90% of them. And that is a very good way to water. We don't lose any water that way, and we can control the water. If we cut back some of the water in the parks, we might end up adding bags onto some of those trees for some supplemental watering.
And
And
then all too, Pam, most if not all of our trees that we water have mulch
all our mulch,
in the base too.
yeah, we have really focused on that as well.
Oh, the ones there at the trees are right along by the community center. Is there a way that you could take the west side, eaves troughs, get them buried underneath the concrete so they will run into the trees instead of, being squashed, destroyed, you know? Cause like, we walk that path quite a bit, and then eaves troughs are just like just totally destroyed all the time.
Yeah, we've got to come up with a better way
We
there
have
for sure, but
discussed
everything
that.
on the east side, it
East
would be
side.
tough to get to come.
Yeah.
Everything on the west does go into the concrete and out to the park.
Oh,
It
Yeah,
does come out,
this-
there is a spot out there.
Yes.
We are looking at, starting to save some water where we can off of, in some of our own buildings.
Yep.
A trial, is gonna happen at the cold storage. At least we can control access there, because it's gated, et cetera. And, hopefully we can expand that if it,
Yeah, the challenge we have, and we chatted earlier, Kevin had mentioned to me that we had an old brine tank that we could use, and the park shop was perfect location for it, because as Pam said, there's room, it's self-contained. The trouble with trying to collect water in tanks at our other facilities is, you can put a little residential one that'll be full in 30 seconds when we get rain. If you want to put something substantial, it's in the way of people coming in and out, but we are keeping an eye open for opportunities there where we may be able to save some rainwater and use that in our system, so.
yeah, retrofitting takes a lot of planning because it has to be safe. And,
This was a tank that we had from, like you mentioned, an old arena project, and it's a 1,500 gallon tank that will sit outside, and we can only collect half off of that. Is the contractor said if we go the whole length of it, it just overflows.
And so what building is it?
Our cold storage building in
Where's that?
behind our shop,
Really,
right
here,
next to
okay.
the welding shop, yeah. So we'll collect it there, and then we have pumps that will be able to pump it and fill, so we're not gravity feed. I don't have to try and build the thing. It's gonna sit on the ground. We'll pump it in with a gas trash pump and fill it up. We'll see how it goes this year.
That's gonna create a little bit more work and
well,
not too much, but I guess it's then free water, right? You're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
Paying for that.
We'll try this, and if this works, then we always have the other end of the building, that then we would have to look at maybe investing in a tank, but we'll see what we gain out of this, if we are gaining what we hope out of it.
so that was the, overall picture for our general parks. Was there anybody have any questions for me on that side of things? So I did want to talk a little bit about Hector King Hunter. It was treated as a separate entity from everything else.
well, I kind of threw it into one, Pam.
Yeah, well, no, but
it's
that's
it's
fine.
identified separately from the other
Right.
ones, yeah.
Pam, I know, around the library, it always looks so beautiful. There's a huge amount of planting goes there, but has any thought about xeriscaping, things that look beautiful but have less work, for employees, cost, and now water conservation?
Well, it's like I tried to take that into consideration when I was, writing up these notes. I know it looks like that's just a big blob of annual flowers, but again, it's been planted for beneficial pollinators, and because it provides like the season-long, flowering. Once you start getting into some of the xeriscaping and perennial beds are not, low maintenance, undertaking by any means, and, so you have to balance that out. You have to have a number of different plants planted then for different times of the summer. And just and then you only really would have room for a few there. I just think the overall benefit for the ecosystem there is that type of planting that we've been doing, and then it's easy to keep that soil maintained. You don't have to worry about trying to get in there and spray weeds or how you're going to get weeds out of your perennial flowers, because everything, and that all has to be dug up every few years. As you know, probably from your perennials that you have, it's a lot of work. So we have discussed that, and maybe it will change in the future. But I really like the reasoning that we have for having it planted that way. And it's the same up at the cemetery. That's all, we could have abandoned that, but we planted it for pollinators.
Yeah, and I just think of it as, long-term, I know you're transitioning, and now we're looking at water conservation, and this is the first. I mean, this could go on for several years, so we're going to have to look at, what that looks like with all these spaces where we have all this planting going on. So-
No, it's, I don't think it's a problem planting in the future. It's actually pretty easy to plant. We can change the way we water in there, and I would like to see that. I'd like to see it done with drip watering in there if we could. And I think we can do that pretty easily. So there are some, it's definitely just part of the options.
Could you catch water off the library then in that space to?
On that east side, the water off that flat roof on that side waters that big spruce tree.
Oh.
And
okay.
that tree looks great.
Yeah,
And I'd
Okay,
really
perfect.
rather keep it that way.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. It was,
Yeah, it comes out the front and
okay.
We do
there's
lose-
some out the back.
We do lose some out the back end that, I don't know how we capture
I
that,
don't
but it
know.
runs out onto the parking lot.
Yeah.
When you look at that situation, I don't know what you'd have to do to change that.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's part of the options.
I think the biggest thing is just, and listening to Kevin and Pam, the plant watering is a very small portion of our parks and recreation water, that gets less than 10%. And I realize we're cutting everywhere we can, but I think we're looking at the wrong, guts. I think we need to look at the ball diamonds, the L as everyone calls it. Those are areas that, I mean, obviously we want to water the trees in the L because that's very important. That's.
Yeah.
But I think we need to, like I said, focus on cuts that we can make without upsetting. And I for one, Pam, and I'll apologize. I always plant flowers in front of my shop last year. I thought, heck, I'm just gonna plant vegetables. None of my stuff did very well because there was no flowers to pollinate my, it's a learning curve, right?
You're exactly like me when we were meeting with Pam last week and talking about pollinators and flowers and never even put two and two together.
I just eliminated the flowers because you can't eat them. So. I did, it's like,
Yeah, so even their trees, some of our trees are planted. We've got some trees that are great pollinators.
Yeah.
And it's just for the overall benefit of the town and people that are trying to live and grow stuff here. A lot of times people come to a little town because they can have a bigger yard. They can grow a lot of their own food. So I just feel like we're part of that situation.
Yeah, that's great.
and I think as long as we're conscious about what we're doing, I think, I mean, we are, obviously, we're having this meeting. If we weren't, we wouldn't be talking, so.
And I think Lori was going to do some work with putting more information out there about how people could use their water more wisely.
Yeah.
And one thing I did want to say about Hector, because I know we will be cutting the irrigation back there some, but a lot of the planting there can be done so that it's taking advantage of some of the irrigation that's going to be on. And it's planted in the same way as the rest of the town flowers with a real emphasis on beneficial plants. So I just wanted to mention that. Because Lynn had done some work here too for your knowledge.
Any other questions of Pam McGavin?
Just, so do you, try to get some thoughts, like, we'd like to take this information and create a plan that council can approve, so are there thoughts then on, like, they put forward some planting conservation options on page 2, the bottom, so we could reduce flowers planted by 40%, and we would only plant in the desert planters, and then there's a few selected areas where we would put some planters. Where would that, so that would reduce flowers where, if we went and only did option 1, where would we not be planting if council wanted to go that direction?
There would be like nothing at the caboose, nothing at the
Library.
electronic sign. No, the library was included in that one.
Okay,
Nothing at Fox Lake. No,
cemetery,
nothing in the plot at the cemetery.
The entrances, the three,
There's desert planters at the west side. And then I did include the 3 barrels at the East Geese Monument, but that would take 40% out.
okay.
And that includes, I mean, with downtown
Yeah,
going on, we're not gonna have, there's big planters in the Legion Park and the old
Truman,
Truman lot that
And the
won't be
stop
planted
signs.
anyways, and
there won't be
where we
any
stop,
stop
those won't be
signs.
planted.
Yeah, so you're saving them.
Yeah,
So how much do you think that would really save? If you said 40% of 10%?
like I said, in the grand scheme, when
Yeah,
it
it's
came to me
nothing.
yesterday and I looked at the meter readings a little
Yeah.
closer,
Yeah.
it's,
Well, and unfortunately, the areas you just mentioned, Pam, in my opinion,
Are beneficial?
are very beneficial.
Yeah.
Like the tourist information is critical to me.
Yeah.
The entrances are critical to me. Fox Lake Park, I mean, we're trying to promote. I'm gonna say something and I'm probably gonna be in trouble for it, but I think we maybe go to some more, like I said, dry land type, but I think we still maintain everything we have. I'm not in favor of cutting, our water flowering. Just do our diligence with, like I said, the irrigation thing. And ultimately, the end goal is a 10% reduction. Well, you've done over 10% just with the watering, so, my opinion.
And I think looking at stuff that I've read from other places, all of our flower planting for the most part is hand water. And when you look at some other communities and conservation measures, even when they're cutting down at residential to only even or odd watering or whatever, they still are allowing hand watering because, you know, you're very specific, very targeted versus throwing a sprinkler in your entire garden plot and letting it run for 2 hours versus hand watering your actual rows. So that's why, as Kevin mentioned before, we don't have a significant amount of water that's used for our flowers. As Kevin mentioned, irrigation will be the biggest way to save the water, so.
Well, and
So
that's
smooth.
huge information. You know, I think I made the misconception that a lot of it is the hand like is the flowers and stuff, but knowing it's 10%, you know, that's huge. So yeah, no, I'm favor of keeping the flowering the way it is downtown in those areas and for some beautification and for the pollinators and that sort of thing, so.
So we are at minimum this year for sure, removing all the
Stop
plantings
sign flowers.
downtown. So
Yeah.
stop signs, Truman's Lot and the Legion Park
Yeah,
because of the construction, so.
Yeah.
It's funny, on one hand, we want it to rain, the other hand, we don't.
Well, it's just, we just want to not rain on those 2 blocks.
Yeah, exactly. Go to hell.
for this period of time.
I actually wonder why we're even having this conversation based on, other than the provincial initiative, and I was in Edmonton, and that was one of the highlights of the whole President Summit. But in fact, we had conversations with with Garth, was at the table.
Yep.
And he virtually said we had water, we had a drought-driven year last year. And so we do have the water source that we're gonna need for this year, the same as last year. So in fact, I think it's the optics. If we're not willing to move on the optics, then I don't think we should press anybody in our community to do water conservation if we in fact are not being a leader in those departments either. So I know we're talking about, we have to, I think that there is a bit of education because like I heard, watering your garden for 2 hours is probably ineffective. More consistent watering is very effective, and which in fact requires less water. So I guess to me, I'm questioning why we're having this conversation if in fact we're not making any movement, we're not making any changes.
Well, we're gonna
We're
cut our
aware.
irrigation.
We're gonna, pardon?
We're cutting our irrigation,
Okay.
which is
so-
90% of our water use for Parks and Rec.
Okay, so we're cutting irrigation back, but we in fact have the water source. We do
Correct.
have the water.
Provinces that she did.
Yeah.
But the whole thing
Because we
is,
have the.
we don't know what the rivers are gonna be like. That's the whole thing. Like Garth says this, but if he goes down and looks at that river, we're the next ones because we were down there already and looked at it. And it's not that great, because if they gotta go and start moving pipes to get the water, we're not getting it.
I think our outlying regions are probably suffering more than the municipality.
The benefit for us is obviously heartland. Water requirements.
Yeah.
And, like Garth has said, we are a small piece of that puzzle. They wouldn't even notice the water we're drawing off that line to fill our reservoir. But there is obviously, I think ethically, morally, there probably is some obligation to be as wise with our water as possible. And even as the gentleman from Alberta Environment indicated, they want to leave those decisions to the local level. They don't want to be heavy-handed. I'm assuming if they get into a position where our water is really sacred, they might become heavy-handed. But this point, and they talked a lot about economics, economics. So you're not going to shut down. And I'll use the golf course as a prime example. If the golf course didn't have access to water and could not water their greens and tee boxes, the golf course would close. And think of the economic spin-offs of the jobs, of the food supplies, the liquor supplies, the people coming into the community to golf and be in tournaments. You lose that whole economic stream. And that's why I think they're being careful in not wanting to be heavy-handed and cause issues like that. So we have to look at it. Kevin and I didn't have this talk about the amount of water we use for flowers. So certainly that's new information for all of us. And we'll move forward. Irrigation is a tougher one to say how much we're gonna save, because again, if it's a really dry drought year, obviously we're not getting any rain, you're gonna have to put more, and it's unfortunate it's potable water. And it's unfortunate that our irrigation systems are all aged. We don't have the brand new techie fancy ones that, they're set to go off at a certain time. And all of a sudden it could be pouring rain at 3 o'clock in the morning, your sprinklers are off. They're not set to, they notice and feel rain that they automatically shut off. So there's some challenges there, but I do think, and I've challenged Kevin in the past, and we have to, when I look especially the cost of water, we probably spent $75,000 watering ball diamonds, parks, and if you've got some leaks in that old system, you're losing water there that may not surface, but you are still losing water. So we have to be a little more diligent, 100% on that. And I think now knowing that's where the majority of our parks water is in irrigation, that brings it even more highlighted more that we have to be more diligent in turning systems off when we are getting rainy weather, leaving them, reducing the amount we're putting on, and go from there. So
They haven't set in as the R mugs. Basically, it's an awareness. People, I mean, it's like the power outage or power shortage. I mean, the grid dropped 20% in just over an hour in usage. And I think we make people aware of the fact that there is a shortage of water potentially. I think for the most part, I think most everyone will buy into it. I mean, there's obviously some that won't. But I mean, you can't control the people. And as far as, like I said, if we publicize the fact that we're saving water with more responsible irrigation, then I think we're showing some leadership.
at the end of the day, the real, I think, challenge for us and the real drop dead date for us will be when Garth needs to fill his reservoir for the summer, and if there's any implications at that point in time for him to be able to draw or fill his reservoir, that's when we may have to be more diligent and more mandatory in terms of what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. If Garth and Henry Kruger is able to draw the water they need for their reservoir, in the spring, and they have a full reservoir. As he said, we've got the allocation that we normally have, and there's not changed. And I know Councillor Thurl has indicated, I haven't been down, I've been through Drumheller and seen the levels, but I know when the Alberta Environment guys presented, they basically said that Red Deer was normal.
Is that normal,
And
right?
Dixon was close to normal. Old Man down south, when you see the pictures
Stream
of the old man, that's really scary.
It looks like a creek,
Yeah,
not a river.
it does,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like
So-
the water breaking down.
But it's hard for us if they're not, if they're really restricted and we're like, oh, we got all the water we want. You know, I still think ethically and morally, we need to be as wise with it as we can.
Is the golf course going to review their watering to try and be as environmentally conscious as?
They already are.
Okay.
I don't think, yeah, I
They
don't,
don't have water, so they don't.
with CN Reservoir, basically drying up or dried up, they lost that ability to draw from there. So they do have, raw water from, Henry Kruger that they have, but it's not what they would normally put on. So last year, for example, they didn't irrigate the fairways. They focused because all the water that they had access to, the tee boxes and the greens. And the greens are where you make your money. It's nice to have lush green fairways, but, the greens are where you've got a lot of money invested in them. So you want to make sure they're good, and that's why people will come back and play. So they have cut back significantly their water. And I know they have for the previous few years, just looking at how CN was reacting, and they weren't getting the runoff to fill it, so they were starting to withdraw there. And as they got to the point, I don't even know if they could draw from CN right now.
They are using, and I'm not familiar with how it works, but it's called a surfactant, so basically you add it to the water and then the water actually attaches itself to the leaf and absorbs more.
Okay.
That's something that Kevin's been doing up there for a few years now as well, try to get every
Drop,
Well,
every drop.
every value out of every drop of water, so that's one of the things that Kevin has, is the surfactant, and, like I said, if you wanna ask Kevin more, like, not this Kevin, but Kevin, maybe just ask him about surfactants and stuff, and yeah,
No, I
And the-
just wanted to make sure that we're all on board.
And the
with it.
golf course
Yeah, good.
water sometimes becomes controversial in the public, but I think you have to look at the big picture. And yes, you know, if you're not a golfer, it's still, the golf course is a benefit to the community. And just, well, don't give them water, they don't need water. Well, they bring a lot of people to town and a lot of dollars to town.
Well, there's no difference between that and the hockey.
Right,
Oh, you put water on
Yeah.
the rink, and I'm totally supportive of that, and the plants. One of the first things I noticed when I moved to Hanna was how beautiful the plants are. And without pollinators, we don't have a life. We all die if we have no bees, it's so important that everything grows. And without that, it's not just aesthetic, it's actually our livelihood. So I'm so supportive of keeping it with all the work you're doing. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do without you. You're gonna have to train somebody all year.
Kevin's green thumb's coming out now.
Yeah.
We'll see if I can reach that bar.
Go ahead,
I just have
It's a
a,
vote.
and I think, I was surprised that we, only use 60% of the water that's allotted to us. And just because we have that does not mean that we should not be good water stewards
Mhm.
within our area. And it's such a big issue, it's going to be. And so the sooner we get, we all look at cutting back. I know when I do my laundry, I make sure there's a good load or even drying and stuff to make sure that it's not using more than it needs. Well, just the little bits that we can all do
Yeah.
to ensure that, like you said, maybe it drops down to 40%, well, That's throughout the whole area. So we need to be, and especially if it's a provincial thing, and if we're seen as not adhering to that, well, then why should everybody else? You know, I think like you mentioned, you know, good leaders and that sort of thing, but yeah, I think the sooner we get on it, the better for planning for the future too. So.
And to add to that, I really like the idea of the catching water, because I think that is, those optics are good for, and yeah, that's a good practice to get into with, you know what, catching as much water as we can.
We had actually talked about it for quite a few years. This is just actually
Yeah.
finally we're just.
This was the nudge you needed.
Yeah, the
Well,
conversation's been had.
It's way better. I mean, we catch all, even at my own property, personal
Yeah.
property. Like primarily all the water I water my baskets with are from rainwater.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when there's, but it is way better for your plants.
Yes.
So.
They do actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
They're not done.
So, go ahead.
Well, I just like to say, keep up the good work. It's been excellent. Like, I mean, you know, we can't. And I mean, 10% or whatever, it's not gonna affect anything much. Yeah.
Well, I think we need to market the fact that by cutting our irrigation, we're actually knocking a huge volume off our.
And that's just it. I'm hoping if nothing else we took away from this, it gives you guys an answer when someone says, look at all these flowers out here. What are you guys doing to conserve water? At least just know that we're supporting that and doing what we.
And I think you're talking about grass recovery. I mean, there's some education around that. There's a big piece around that.
Yeah.
You can let lots of, you know, depending on the types, you can let them die totally out. And the recovery time is, you know, when you do have the rain and the moisture, the recovery time is almost immediate.
Yeah.
So there's,
And prioritizing our parks, right? Like the triplex is more important than say the elm, obviously. The trees we'll look after, but the park where the kids are playing and everything, we'll
Yeah,
maintain it,
for
but
sure.
we're
I
not.
think that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
We have
And
to
you're
provide those
very-
spaces.
A few areas that where it's just grass that's watered.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and mostly it'll be like our trees are involved as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's an investment you don't want to lose.
No.
Especially the young ones, you need to keep them, where the older ones, they've already established a root system.
Yeah.
But the problem is with the drought, the root system is
Not as deep as it
not
should
as
be.
deep
Yeah.
as it should be. But what I look at, you know, after we get this information, we should be publishing this, you know, let people know what the town is doing, you know, and it'll maybe show some of the others that have got sprinklers going that it's running down.
And by having the ones on Main Street, you know, not using them this year,
Yeah.
that's probably 10% of the flowers right there. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
and stuff,
those are
so
big.
it'd be very easy, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
We're on the right track.
I think if we just keep up what we're doing, we'll be fine.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Actually, that, it was interesting, that 10% thing, I would have. And you're right, because we do water by hand. I mean, it's the sprinklers running when there's a puddle underneath them and it's raining out and I'm driving to work at 5:30 in the morning. I'm looking like,
Yeah.
those are the ones. And it just, I think it's, and I don't know how, I'm assuming, Kevin, it's a matter of hitting, pressing a button and delaying it for a day or.
Yeah,
So just watching the
we're
forecast.
gonna do a lot more
or try
forecast
to watch
watching
the
as
for-
opposed to, oh,
the
it's raining, we
forecast
should go
is
shut them
all
off.
over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been doing this for a few decades now, and I was blown away to see the meter readings. Like, I know what we do, I know where our water's going, but to know how minuscule
actual numbers.
the flower watering was compared to everything
And
else.
it's the hand watering
It just-
makes all the difference.
And I knew it would be less, but I was blown away at the
How
difference.
little, yeah.
You can talk.
Okay. We get a motion to thank administration and presentation of the town of Hanna, watering process and options. For consideration of the town developing a water conservation plan with directs administration to bring forward a formal conservation plan to future council meeting for approval. Councilor Farrell had his hand up way early, Brad. I know he started, so.
Yeah.
All in favor?
I'm gonna
Thank
put
you.
my handcuffs.
Sorry. Brad. Gotta keep involved, otherwise quits on me over here, or he'll start smacking me.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, thank you very much.
I hope you got an apprentice.
Yes, I mean, Lynn is very involved,
yeah.
although she does not want to move from Hector King Hunter. But we have a couple of other ideas, so, yeah, there's been lots of work done so that there is a smooth transition.
You're not moving.
Well, no, my daughter would come and drive me away. So,
Okay.
yeah, it has to happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pam.
Oh, and Carlos is not here. Oh,
Yeah.
He sent an email.
yeah, he did.
I'm so.
Yeah. Okay,
It might
Trace.
be good. This should be short and sweet.
So just, yeah, Tracy, just start. So, the urban hen, discussion has been on the table since 2017. It was the first, approach council had at the time of urban hens, and council was, not 100% sure what they wanted to do, how they wanted to go. The long and short of it is, they basically approved, moving to a public engagement session to see what the community felt about urban hens. Then I think the previous council took the out, and this is no disrespect to them, they took the out and they said, well, it's only a couple more months to an election, so why let us do this? There's a couple months to election, let the new council deal with it. So that would have been the previous council. And it basically has sat vacant. No one has brought it up. Councilor Olson brought it up last summer and when council had a discussion. He just wanted to, I think, test the water with council to see what their thoughts were. And I think from the consensus around the table that majority of people were in favor of considering it and looking at what it could look like. I don't know if until the challenge gets to actually voting whether they want to implement one, but they weren't opposed to not going down the road of investigating, seeing what it could look like. Tracy has put together an urban hen section, but she also implemented it into an animal control, so it's in the animal control draft bylaw. Some places, and we can still go that way, have a separate urban hen bylaw if we choose to. So Tracy's prepared this draft. We just wanted to run through it with council. As Tracy said, most of the animal control stuff is pretty similar to the existing bylaw. And we'll probably not spend a great deal of time on that, but we will spend significant time on the urban hen draft as it is to see if there's anything that council doesn't like or thinks it's missing or whatever. And I know it's a little, timing is not good because you haven't had a chance to, read the 40-page document. But I think we'll touch on the highlights today. You guys will take the package back, you can read through it. And this certainly is not approving anything, it's just getting the topic back on the table and going through what a potential bylaw could look like, so.
Well, but in a year and a half, it won't be a problem, so I don't know.
Well, you could,
Just kidding.
yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. Let's move it on.
So with that, sorry, Tracy, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no problem. So section 5 is focusing on the urban hen. Just a quick rundown, the reason why I drafted an updated animal control bylaw is because the previous one is 30 years old. There is legislation that needs to be linked to it, provincial legislation, including the Provincial Offences Procedures Act, as well as mirroring provincial legislation in regards to animals. That is something that we do need to make sure that is updated and included. It also gives a stronger hold of designation and authority to the CAO. It updates definition sections and it modernizes the verbiage completely. So it's more easy to read and understand and interpret for the general public as well as yourselves, and it's also easier to use and apply, especially if we enter into a situation where we end up going to court. So that is that. If you go to section 5, now I am not well versed on chickens. I am not a chicken expert. Section 5, sorry,
Page
is the urban hen. Portion.
Page 24.
Yes, sorry.
That's what I thought.
Operating sections. Definition section is quite detailed as well to involve urban hens. And I jumped ahead, so I am
No
going
turkey
to,
burn.
yes. Gotta go back. I see, even though I edited this copy a few times, I see I still caught a few more things in here. And has anybody read through it, and do you have any questions?
No.
And I think, as I said, Tracy, go
Got it late
through the
last night.
highlights for sure, so.
Okay. I mixed up all my papers here.
The only part that I saw that might have to be adjusted is the, you know, using other people's areas where it's 1 per 1,500
Well, but that was,
population, that would be 2 people in
yeah, that
town.
was
Yeah.
just in the agenda item, not necessarily in the bylaw.
Right,
So
Right.
the agenda item, that's where a lot of communities that are larger than us are restricting the number of licenses to that. You're right, if we
Yeah.
did that, it would be 1.5, and is it even worthwhile doing it for 1.5
I know would
licenses?
get it, in 10,
But
but
we'd have to be careful, and you don't know where it's gonna go or how it's gonna go. I don't think we're gonna have a tremendous amount of people who want a license. But I guess that would be where you find, this bylaw does not restrict the number of licenses the town can award as it sits now.
you either have bad pet owners or you have good pet owners.
Yeah, we do have to be mindful that this is going to also add an additional education enforcement component to my role as well.
That's where I'm.
And when we get into keeping
The
fowl, well, the piece too, absolutely. Obviously, there's components involved where there could be issues where people in other communities have snuck roosters in, and I don't know how long it's a secret, but
Till the next
things
morning
like
at
that. Or ducks, or the smell, and maintaining it and making sure that people understand exactly what they're entering into, and that it's not just more of a fad, that these are living things and they need to be properly cared for and maintained, and they can become a huge problem in the community with whether it's disease, smell, cleanliness.
Attraction of,
Yeah,
Would part of this process be, for example, Danny is notorious for not cutting his grass, not shoveling his sidewalk, but he applies for urban hens.
Yeah.
Could that be part of the application process?
History of non.
Because that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we can tweak that, and that's, Counselor Murphy said it, you have good pet owners, you got bad pet owners. I think the challenge here, you're not gonna have as many, but if you have a bad pet owner that has an urban hen license, the trouble gets with enforcement, and then you're the one saying, you no longer have a license, your license has been revoked, you have to move it, and then if they're attached to those hens, they're gonna fight that to the bitter end. So we gotta be prepared to deal with that. I don't think it's not gonna be, hens are not gonna be like dogs and cats. We're not gonna have that many households that have them. I would be shocked if we had a dozen in the community that would wanna have a
they're
urban
gonna be a
hens.
passion project, and they're gonna be somebody's, people are gonna enter into this with good intentions, I would expect, because they're expensive. Like, and, well, expensive as in like a
Well, to
urban
maintain,
program.
to maintain a cat's $100 a month. I would have never thought that. I mean, by the time you buy your food and your litter and all that stuff and shots and stuff, it's $100 a month per cat. And a chicken is going to be expensive to maintain. by the time you buy your feed and you clean up and yada, 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 I mean, and I think once people realize it's
Yeah.
the cost attached to these.
You build your coop.
Yeah.
and Yeah.
The other important issue is that they are going to, and I don't mean to lean to the negative, but I do think we need to consider the realities and then the problems that may arise from this. And that we already have, a cat problem in town. We don't have a cat bylaw, and a cat bylaw, I do not believe will solve that problem whatsoever. It is, those cats are attracting coyotes. Coyotes historically are next to impossible to deal with. They just replace the ones that end up being terminated, I guess. So this may also encourage our coyote problem, and we just need to make sure that from an enforcement side of things and an education side of things, that people are adhering to this and that we are very strict with the application process and that people are also educating themselves. And there is a component for a training course. It
That's
is
just what-
$50
Yeah,
online course.
that's what I like, I said.
Yeah.
Certified
Online.
training.
What do we teach to the chickens?
Yeah.
We are actually, this is a huge component of majority of communities that have an urban
Yeah.
hen bylaw, and it's accessible online. It's a $50 course. I am actually gonna take it myself. Because I need to at least be able to talk a little bit. I'm dealing with it, so, yeah. But for the most part, I think there's a progressive opportunity here.
So let's go back to section 5 and just run through some of the highlights page by page, Tracy, if you can.
Sure. So there's the definition of hen keeping, and that's 5.1. The section is to enable the keeping of hens. Urban agriculture hen keepers to hold a valid hen license for the town and always to remain in compliance with the provisions of this bylaw. That is obviously paramount. Then it leads into hen licensing requirements, and it gets quite detailed.
And these are some things where we would want feedback from council and probably the public as we move forward. So this draft says maximum of 4. Is that the right number? Should it be 2? Should it be 6? Should it be 8? Those are things we'll want feedback on as we move forward.
And we can run through each of these, or we can just stick to the highlight.
Well, I think I would go through the license requirements, so council has a good understanding what is required.
Sure. So there's the maximum of 4 urban hens per household in the town. We can, like Kim said, adjust this to whatever we feel is appropriate for this community. First.
In order to qualify to have 4 hens.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Yeah, no, let's get to right one.
Okay. First contacting all adjoining neighbors and notify them of the intent to apply for a hen license on the subject's property. So the neighborhood is impacted, especially if they're not following provisions, they're not cleaning. We all know what chicken feces smells like. It is very strong and it can be very disruptive if it's not properly maintained. If it's maintained, cleaned properly, this is not going to be an issue.
So
That's why-
adjoining is just immediately adjoining.
It's adjoining would be, yeah, your direct neighbors around you.
Next
Um,
door.
Yeah.
And
next door
if
neighbors.
one of them says nay, are they,
This part doesn't speak to that, so
okay,
So if I'm your neighbor, Counselor Murphy, and I want urban hens and you don't, just because you say no, you don't like it, doesn't mean I can't have them. But you have to be notified and aware. There is some, later on in the bylaw, there is some things that if we do grant myself a license, that you can appeal it and
Okay.
for whatever reasons you want to appeal it on, so.
Then you get a shotgun.
and
And you
then
would
you have a bunch of very unhappy neighbors.
It's to promote peace in the neighborhood and not encourage neighbor disputes. And it's also common in other bylaws like home-based businesses. So we see this in others as well, or kennel licenses, which we do not have in this one. Obtaining a premises identification under the Animal Health Act. So this is a link to a provincial act as well. And it's just part of the legal process and that we can. go into a little bit more, and Vern probably knows more about that than I do.
Urban chicken training course.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I do think that the urban chicken training course is important because this can be very, this can be a fad with some people and they don't actually know what they're doing. And it's really important that they at least get a baseline education before they enter into this situation. These animals have to go somewhere if they don't know what to do, and they can also be subject to inhumane treatment, which means that the SPCA and other investigation would take place.
Well, it encourages, them. Like, I mean, if they have to invest time and money,
Yeah,
they're gonna, you know.
Yeah,
use the
exactly.
appropriate.
exactly. It brings in another level of accountability as well, which is always good.
And it might be that tipping point where you think you wanna have an urban hen and you go through the training program, and go, oh, I didn't realize that, or I didn't know that, and that might be the tipping point that says, this isn't for me.
Mhm. Satisfaction of the town and the adjoining neighbors, we discussed this. Providing the town with information such as a name, address, contact phone number of who will be a hen keeper. This is very important. If we do not collect proper information, it is next to impossible for me to get a hold of them currently. And they do have to be a resident of the community as well. Providing the town with a copy of the certificate of the title for the subject property issued by Land Titles Office, not more than 2 weeks prior to the date of this. This is more of an accountability, again, back to legal ownership. It does not mean that a tenant cannot have chickens. That is the next section, or provide the town with written permission to keep hens on the subject property from the registered owner. That is your tenant or your occupant. So they're just getting legal permission from the property owner. So they don't have free reign to do whatever they want on that property. Next, providing the town a drawing that shows the location size, the coop, very similar to our development permit applications. And the size of it is going to be under the requirements of the development permit. However, I do think that it's important that we have this in here because we do need to make sure that people are adhering to a proper coop. So these animals are cared for and contained properly to not attract wildlife or the neighbor's cat, etc.
Oh, that's one question I got there, you know, is about the license for these, if they gotta pay a license like a dog license. No, I think that it's almost compared, you know, with cats, because most of them, I'll let my cat out, like. And he's already, oh, let's go. You know, so then you're gonna have more issues with, like, you better start catching these feral cats in town. You know, if I'm, have to be a responsible chicken owner, we gotta have something in the books here about, or, you know, cat guys have to start.
See, there's nothing right now in this animal control bylaw, there's nothing about cats.
Yeah, I know, this
That's
is
right.
one thing
And
that's
cats,
really bothered me quite a bit.
Cats are a major problem.
cats are a problem, but the bylaw and the financial obligations put on the town of Hanna if you have a bylaw.
Be tens of thousands of dollars.
Because you catch a feral cat, you catch a cat, even if it's somebody's cat. You're obligated to deal with that cat, so you have to home that cat, you have to feed that cat, and then no owner comes forward, you have to
That's where,
do something with that cat, which it's the town's cost, and I know when I was in Stony, that was one of they implemented a cat bylaw. They didn't have their own pound.
Yeah.
So they used the Parkland County pound, but the arrangement with them, so if you caught a cat, took it there, it was $20 a day.
Yeah.
To feed and house and maintain that cat for up to a certain period of time. And then at the end of the day, if no one's playing that cat, if they can't get rid of that cat, then if you had to euthanize that cat, that cost was yours. And they just found that the financial cost of it was humongous. And at the end of the day, I know it's always a debate on Facebook whether cats should be restricted to be outside cats. The other thing, and this is my personal opinion of people with cats, they don't seem to necessarily, and this isn't across the board, be attached to their cat as much as they're attached to their dog. So generally, if a cat goes out,
I disagree with you.
well, I've said not across the board,
Wholeheartedly.
but if a lot of cats go out, you don't see a ton of people looking for their cat, and they assume that because it's out and it's running loose, something may have happened to it. But generally, if you see a dog out, people are looking for that dog, and that's just my opinion, that's no science
You're
to
entitled.
that.
You are not a cat person, Mr.
I am
Mayor.
not.
Clearly.
I am not. But,
My Ralphie has never come home
Yeah.
from my fire. And I can't even talk about it most
Yeah.
of the time.
so there is nothing about cats in here.
Yeah.
If council wants to go down that direction, we can explore that, but it is,
I know
it is a
it's
challenge.
but it's going to come up like, if I gotta be responsible for these chickens. And I pull out, and it'll happen probably, I'm going to start. And it is happening, cats are being found in this town being shot already.
Shot.
Yes,
People are shooting.
no, the SPCA lady, they've rescued 4 cats that have already been wounded. So we already got
SPCA.
You mean harvest guy?
our harvest guy. Yeah. She brought it up here the other night. They've already brought in 4 cats that are being
There is an opportunity to address a feral cat, like stray feral cat problem under the definition of an animal.
Yeah.
As a municipality, it's not necessarily a cat bylaw. There's no licensing involved. Licensing ultimately helps to fund dealing with animal control problems. Essentially, we don't have large licensing fees in town here.
No.
And the level of compliance, I would say, is maybe 50%, if that, we're lucky. But it does go to helping facilitate animal control issues, that we do have a cat problem, and it's not to say that this new draft doesn't have cats in it per se. We can address issues. It's not gonna be the popular one, but we do have to deal with some things before they get out of control. And if we were to enter into an agreement with, say, a Pound and Drumheller or Red Deer, they're looking at charging us $400 per animal surrender. It is a
Oh,
huge
it's
cost.
expensive.
So
Yeah.
Tracy, I'm just, like we were saying, feral and versus house pet,
Mhm.
there's a difference there. I
Absolutely.
mean, the feral cats, we have they're running
No.
wild, they
Oh, yeah.
end up on our steps, I rescued one 2 years ago, had no ears, had no tail, had a lame leg, and he's now my home pet.
Yeah.
But ended up starving to death, so the feral cat, is it the feral cats that are a problem versus is it the house pet? I'm having trouble understanding which one
Well,
we're talking about here.
I don't know, I
Okay.
think,
First of all, we're working on our
Yeah.
hands.
I know,
but
so
in-
now we're talking about
but in regards to cats,
cat, so.
in regards to cats, I think the frustration from homeowners are what the cats are doing in their flower beds and stuff, and that will be a combination of feral cats and house cats that are let out on a regular basis. And unless they're identified and have a tag on them or something that you can identify them, you won't know if they're a house cat or a feral cat, but that's the issues that I hear is what they're doing in people's flower beds and gardens and stuff, so
But what I'm hearing is now we have to look at a bylaw that's gonna address now cats, if we're gonna have.
we don't have
A
to.
bylaw that's gonna address urban hens, so.
Not
Just
today,
wondering.
it's just an element of
Okay.
making sure that the coop is contained, so if we do have other visitors into their yard, those animals are contained and safe.
Right, for sure, and they would.
Yeah. And obviously cat's a carnivore as well as
Yeah.
we have our coyotes, right? They just happen to be, I don't know how many dogs catch chickens, but I'd like to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, I know. I bet.
Yeah.
These are just a few other issues and, yeah. So the diagram is important and that's what led into the cat conversation. The town completing an inspection of the location, the size of the coop, the outdoor structure, The subject property to ensure all requirements, including size, have been met. Also very important, this is like an initial inspection. We are likely looking at maybe a very small handful of individuals who are going to actually do this, so I don't see a large amount of manpower going into this. And the accountability portion of it is far more important than not, addressing that. No person shall keep or possess a rooster anywhere within the town limits. Obviously, we don't need to discuss why this happens. They're a little bit louder than barking dogs, and it's probably 3:30. Too small, right?
Perfect.
Consider our neighbors, be good neighbors. Pen license approval. Do we want to go right through this or just?
I don't know
Right,
if there's much there. Basically, there would be a license. There's some things in the license just to, it's not transferable. So if Counselor Warwick has one, she can't give it to Counselor Kroll.
Sell it, everyone.
Yeah. It is transferable from one property to another. If I bought Counselor Warwick's house and she had a license, but I still have to go through the process and have the coop identified, inspected, and follow all the same requirements, so. I don't know if there's much there. The one thing, and I'm not sure where it's at, I did read, Tracy, is that you have to have a fenced yard.
Yes.
I believe I read that somewhere.
So that would be a condition for somebody who intends to have their chickens run free, like free range in their backyard. If there's no way to contain
Okay, so
their
it's not,
chickens.
it's not across the board that you have to have.
If they're gonna
fenced yard.
keep it in a coop and they have proper structure
An
surrounding it,
enclosed run,
an enclosed
they
area,
don't
then
necessarily
no.
have to have a fence.
But they'll have to be cognizant of the fact that, yes, wildlife and other animals can easily enter into that
Oh, I
area.
hate to say, hope you got a 12-foot fence because
Well, we don't allow
we
12
know,
foot
I can't have a 12-foot fence.
I know, but the whole thing is a 6-foot fence is going to keep.
For
chickens.
for me, again, as Councilor Murphy identified, I'm not a cat person, I'm not a bird person. So for me, if I was a neighbor, I guess my thought would be, I would like there to be a requirement for a fence so that if I'm in my backyard, I'm not looking at their coop and even if it's in an enclosed structure, I still think it might be important to have a fence as a visual
Definitely,
barrier
yeah.
between the properties.
So
There's that
silly-
option or some
Silly
kind of-
question, I'm just throwing this out there.
Fence isn't gonna make any difference.
So I have 6.5 acres of land. Counselor Cole wants to have urban hens and approaches me to put them on my property.
Yep.
Right now, the way it's written, Mr. Mayor, is that there's a maximum of 4.
No, I'm just asking
Yeah.
because,
And you're the land title owner, so you can approve Fred
Yeah. No,
having
I'm
chickens
just-
on your property.
But just because you have 6.5 acres, doesn't mean you get to have 60.
can I subdivide it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe you could into 12 different parcels.
No, I'm just
Have a bunch of little mini.
I'm just asking because ultimately, like I said, where I'm located at,
You're right.
there is no neighbors to be affected. I mean,
That's a great idea, actually.
It's- Well, I grew up just outside of Edmonton and passing by Lilydale on a regular basis.
Oh.
Pretty right. And I don't know how well that would go over with the community.
No, that's a lot more than 4 chickens.
It's a lot more than 4, but yeah,
Thousands of chickens.
that's why it's really important that we keep it regulated and.
But that's a good
Stay on
point,
top
Mr.
of
Mayor, in
it.
terms of,
Because
Yeah.
size.
you want to get the guys there that are, what are they called, like, Dick Paul, he's got a big enough area, he run horses and stuff. And other people that own agricultural land, but
So
they're in the
just
city.
a clarification to, like, around this, the land use bylaw, the previous land use bylaw dictated, and if you were in urban reserve district, so that's, some of our larger parcels, you could have animals, and there was animal units in it, you could have 2 horses, 4 cows, whatever it was. We took all the animal units out, but if you are in an urban reserve district, you can still have animals in there because it's for extensive agriculture, so. Mr. Mayor's land is not an urban reserve, so he doesn't have that
That's
option.
highway
right now.
commercial, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Industrial, isn't it, Mr. Mayor?
Industrial.
Zoning matters.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's much there. Obviously, under licensings, we can revoke a license. We can choose not to issue or renew a license if they have not followed the proper procedure and we're satisfied with what they do. 513 talks about an appeal. So again, if we can issue a hen license, an appeal lies from a decision of the town to issue a hen license if the appellant is an adjoining neighbor. So Councilor Kroll doesn't want me to have urban hens. He can appeal that decision. He would have to have solid reasons to appeal it, not just because he doesn't like me.
It has to be.
They can
justified.
appeal the conditions if they feel we put more conditions in. So it's basically the appellant or a neighbor primarily are the ability to appeal a decision. So, and again, it goes to the CAO. The CAO there's some timeframes in there. He has to respond and make the decision or have a designate. So again, adjoining neighbor, 515, adjoining neighbor may appeal. Only if the grounds of appeal are that the keeping of hens is likely to have a material adverse effect on the health of the adjoining neighbor. So I don't know if you can be allergic to hens.
I'm sure you can.
Feathers, absolutely.
So that might be an issue if
Yeah,
I'm
feathers.
neighbors to Councilor Kroll and I'm allergic to them, I would have a very good reason to appeal that because of a health issue. But I'm not, I guess you can be allergic.
Some of this seems really contradictive. So you can go to the town, you can apply and get a license, you can take the course. And then, your neighbors around your block get together and say, we're gonna oppose this. So then you're going to be restricted on the fact that you can't then have a hen.
Potentially.
Yeah, I mean,
They need to be justified and it needs to be a substantial justification, not just, I don't like chickens and I don't like my.
but there's lots of justification. I mean, I'm allergic to cats, but I have cats.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all it's easy to
Allergies,
justify
yeah.
not.
It's like-
Allergies are a little
it's no
more
different than pulling a
challenging because
development
there's enough.
permit, you gotta get
Yeah.
that down.
Yeah, to appeal it, based on, I have a chicken
Yeah.
allergy, as long as they're cleaning, maintaining and following the rest of the parameters around, an allergy of a neighbor shouldn't be impacted. Just like I'm allergic to cats, my neighbor has tons of cats, but it doesn't affect me, so.
So Mr. Mayor is correct. So even on the development side, there is always the opportunity to have an appeal on a development. And,
Yeah,
Either-
there's some restriction, that's a little bit more definitive. I think that's
it's
not even
more,
comparable.
not as subjective,
Yeah.
but there is appeal processes, so. And again, section 520, the hen keeper's responsibilities, so again, comply with the Animal Health Act. Good husbandry practices, so they've got to make sure they're fed, watered, shelter, all the things that it identifies there, provide warmth, maintain the coop in good repair. Again, constructed to prevent rodents. So there's a lot of things that are the expectations that are listed there that they need to follow.
So there wouldn't be like a seasonal aspect to this, like you could only have them for the summer months or whatever?
I don't believe so.
That's
don't
where
know
you
if
got it
there's-
in there, they have to have, there is, I did one other section
Yeah.
about the heat.
Heat.
And
Yeah,
that-
there already one that you've got in there about heat lamps and blah, blah, blah.
That's all gonna fall under, the Animal Health Act and the
Yeah.
Animal Protection Act, which is why it's really important that our animal control
Yeah.
bylaw is connected to provincial legislation. Through those other pieces that I mentioned initially, animal neglect,
Is,
falls under, that would fall under neglect,
Yeah.
right?
And that's what you're saying about the cats, is that even though you don't have a cat bylaw, if a cat is being injured, you can use
Yeah.
the Alberta legislation. Okay,
So
thank
So it
you.
gives us
So-
authority to protect these animals
Right.
as well as make sure that they're being maintained.
my understanding again is that some people who will have urban hens, Council Crowe will have them year round. So in that case, they're, required to provide the help and that heat year round, so.
And that also poses another risk,
Somewhere.
having
Yeah,
heat
sure
lamps
do.
and those sources, because there is a huge risk
Yeah,
with
no.
that involved. Fires, possible fires, I mean. if
Which is why it's important that we make sure that they're inspected, the coops are inspected and they adhere to a proper layout and build.
So this is where I read the fenced yard, so under 5.22. The coop is only permitted within a fenced side or rear yard of the residential property. So,
And I almost think a coop would be mandatory. Without a coop, just having them
Yeah.
run around the
Yeah.
yard.
no,
It's mandatory that they have it. It's
no, I
part of the
agree with that, I can't picture that.
Yeah,
I don't think you need a fence. I think if you have proper containment. I mean, there's those mobile moving, like
Chicken trucks,
the chicken.
Tractors.
tractors, I remember that.
Yeah.
word.
And honestly, you don't need a fence. You don't need a fence if you have them contained in those units, because they're very effective. They're actually probably more containment there than if you do have a fenced yard and you have them roaming
See,
free.
my vision, Councilor Warwick, is not that I'm worried about
know
like
what your
running
vision is.
around, it's worried that I could sit on my deck. Having a barbecue and I have to look at these hens running around in there, outdoor.
I know.
Even though I grew up on a farm, that's not something that I,
No fried
Everybody
chicken.
has their
it's
own thing.
a visual thing for me,
Do you
so
mind seeing bunnies run around next door?
I don't wanna see that either. That's why I like a fence. So it does talk about, though. A nest, it does talk about a minimum outdoor run area. So
It's not
you
very
need
big, eh?
10 square feet per hen.
That's the minimum.
It says
That's the
No,
minimum,
no, I'm
yeah.
just saying.
yeah,
that's
No,
for
no,
the
that's the
containment. Yeah.
containment.
Yeah.
The
And
indoor
then the
one.
next one is 10.
Yeah.
The run.
but the runs, you can get them movable ones and you don't have to mow
That's
your
a
back.
chicken truck,
Yeah,
Yeah,
or tractor, whatever it is.
oh, they're great.
so again, there's some stuff on impoundment and disposition if we have to seize them. Take them away, or that talks about running at large, that, when we get out of 5, we're moving back into animal control.
Going back into that. control, yeah.
Code, so.
And there is connection there with it, so.
The only thing that I would want, the only thing that's come up, since this has been drafted that we'll have to include, in a bylaw, if we move down that road, is Michelle Taves was at a emergency social services, meetings. She sits on the Alberta, Emergency Social Services Agency. They are having, a lot of municipalities are really concerned and having issues with, evacuations and urban hens. So they're saying and suggesting to municipalities, if you are gonna have an urban hen bylaw, you need to have it upfront and clear, whether it's in the bylaw, whether it's in the license approval, that in the event of an evacuation, and you have to evacuate your property, and we have a reception center up, that you have to deal with your livestock, your fowl on your own. Don't expect to come to the reception
center.
center with 4 urban hens saying, where am I gonna put them? So I guess it's starting to be an issue in some places, and again, knock on wood, we've been fortunate, we haven't had
Well, I know Yellowknife
evacuations.
with the
but-
evacuating dogs and stuff was a
Oh,
nightmare.
yeah.
And even for us, dogs are tough. The time I've been here, we opened up the reception center for the one winter storm. And we had people come in, of course, they were traveling with their dogs. And you've got 4 or 5 or 6 dogs and it's 25 blowout. What are you gonna do with these dogs? So most of the owners that came were very good. And when they were in the community center, they went off into a side room and kept themselves there. And again, it was a short term, it was just overnight, but animals are a real challenge for that. But that was identified as something we might want to
Consider,
considering a bylaw and or a license in terms of, so that they have it, they don't come and show up at the reception center with their urban hens saying, where do I put them? What are you gonna do with them? So.
on
So-
stage.
Is there, I'm just thinking of the licensing and this PID,
Yeah,
But
is a tag or a band or something that
no,
if a stray chicken was captured, you'd be able to track that tag back to the registered owner, I guess, or?
probably. I think it's more along the lines for, flu
flu and stuff.
and any
Yeah.
bird diseases, that they know where the animals are at and where they came from and all of that, so they can track better.
It's tracked, but you can get the tags like
The cats.
like cats, you can get the
Microchips,
little
yeah.
microchips or the. For,
Yeah, I'm just
They're
thinking
like little
like
ankle
through our
bracelets.
municipal
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
yeah, you can get the bands, government registers.
And then the only other thing that I wondered about in here was when it refers to the Animal Health Act,
Yeah.
if it should say provincial and province of Alberta Animal Health Act, or where is that coming
No,
from?
because the Provincial Offences Procedures Act is Alberta legislation. We're in Alberta, so any act that we reference is going to be provincial legislation because no other act is legally enforceable in this province unless it's an Alberta act. Other than criminal code legislation. Does that make sense?
So I don't know if there's any other questions. What I would suggest from council is
chew on it.
chew on it. Look through the bylaw in its total. If you've got any questions, concerns, things you think are missing, should be added, bring them to our attention. At the end of the day, though, I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe that council would probably want to have some sort of public consultation process. And again, to put some thoughts around what that would look like. Is that an open house? Is that the previous one we talked about doing back a number of years ago was a non-statutory public hearing. So we would basically treat it in a similar fashion. We would call it a public hearing. We'd say the town of Hanna is looking to implement this animal control bylaw or urban hen bylaw, whatever, if we pull it separately. And then we would say, those who are in favor of the bylaw moving forward, it gives them an opportunity to speak to council to say why they think we should have this. It also gives those who would be opposed
Say why.
to that to come in and say, I think this is a bad idea for these reasons. So that is one option. So we have to, I think just based on the nature of the topic that, unless council is really confident they want to move forward without consultation, but I would recommend that there should be some and what that would look like, so.
Yeah, I think you need to do, like you said, a public hearing of some type and basically lay this out as to what, if you're going to have a hen, this is what's expected of you. And vice versa.
I'm sorry.
And vice versa, it allows the people that are opposed to it.
Okay, I see what happened.
And vice versa, allows people that are opposed to it to come and voice their concerns as well, so.
Yeah, because some of their concerns that they may have may be addressed
Or
by
like, yeah,
the bylaw.
correct.
But I think it's like any other bylaw. You're unfortunately gonna have some people who aren't going to abide by it, and then that's where you get into trouble. I think if you have good license holders, you will have very minimal issues, and it's hard. I always find it hard for someone to come and be opposed when we haven't tried it or they haven't seen it. But they may have some good reasons why they don't want it. It's an interesting one when you read across municipalities, more are adding it, some are having it, they're pulling them back and getting rid of them. So it's a bit of hit and miss, so.
Any other questions, thoughts? Like I said, I think we take it a home chew on it
Yeah,
and, bring, if you have some ideas, I've got jotted down a couple of ones I have. Just, bring it back and we can discuss it and carry on.
And so we are gonna consider a public non-statutory hearing.
Well,
first and
that-
foremost
I guess-
before- Or does a motion have to be passed
I
first?
think the best step would be, and I know the recommended motion was to, basically direct administration to make a public engagement plan on new animal control bylaw to future council meeting is fine. It doesn't tie us in terms of time, but I think the best thing is, as the mayor had suggested, give you guys a chance to really look at it and
Trust me,
bring your
You're gonna
questions,
get feedback.
concerns
Yeah.
forward and we can try and address them beforehand.
Try and get a more
In a
firm
draft bylaw.
in place before the public.
Well, and I
engagement
think of,
session.
even our food sources, as more and more food has GMOs and all the rest in it. I know people are looking more to the natural health part of it, raising their own eggs and all
Yeah,
the rest of
yeah,
it. So people
100%.
that were not in favor of it before, I've heard people say differently now, well, maybe we need to start looking at this in different light.
Yeah.
Too, so.
So,
and like I said, with these meetings being broadcasted, we will get feedback. I'm gonna guess probably before the end of the day, someone will reach out to each and every one of you going, are you nuts? Or
Yeah.
what took you so long? So.
But yeah, I think if we take some time to think about it, maybe add it to a future council information meeting to talk about any changes and talk about options on the participation plan, but I do think we need to move forward with one public participation plan, whether it's a public hearing or not, but some sort of format that council can feel comfortable at the end of the day, that they've heard from the residents and the residents can feel comfortable that they have an avenue to express their concerns or their support for it.
And we are a year and a half away from the next election.
Yes.
Okay,
Not to spend any time on this, but it is very important that we do make some updates with animal control bylaw because of the links to legislation and provincial legislation, which gives us the authority to deal with this stuff and also the further involvement of enforcement down the road.
with some of the newer legislation.
Yeah, it makes it a challenge to deal with the problems when we don't have the legal verbiage that's current in it.
Thanks, Tracy.
motion to council thank administration for presentation on the animal control bylaw. Directs a public engagement plan on the new animal bylaw control. For the next council, or for council meeting for approval, future council meeting, sorry. Councilor Cole, all in favor? Boy, I butchered that one.
So talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, throw out there and just say, what are your thoughts?
Okay,
Oh.
all right, quick round table, folks. Councilor Crowell, anything to add to? Councilor Rowick?
No.
Hey, Councilor Murphy?
No, I'm good.
Councilor Thurl?
Well, I could, but I won't.
Okay, and, I have nothing going on in particular. I was considering running up to Red Deer to sit down with a couple of ministers about the new, potential water reservoir. They have put aside $1 million this year, for the project and $4 million for next year. So, on that note, also on May 2nd, the special areas and the MD of Acadia are hosting an open house in, I believe, Acadia Valley with their plans on their irrigation project. So there's not gonna be much to see, but there's possibly they'll take us out and show us where the potential reservoirs will be. They'll show us where the pumping is gonna take place from. And that is May 2nd. I believe it's in Acadia Valley, so.
Mr. Mayor, just in light of what you said there too, just a reminder, Alberta Health Services public meeting is April 11th at 3 p.m. So anybody that hasn't registered, I looked last night and there's still room for registration. So if you haven't registered, there's still an opportunity to register.
Yeah, I'm gonna announce that, but thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, anything else?
So Angie, did they have a date yet for PEP?
Yeah.
The 16th.
I know, I'm sorry, they didn't do there's, yeah.
So I'll adjourn at 10:40.
Good.